Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to be doing some upgrades to our existing van, and in particular on the power and the controls side. On the market at the moment there is this control panel from Auxbeam. You probably would have seen a lot of videos online lately demonstrating their light bars and LED lights for the exterior of your van. They also manufacture this control panel, which is a smart panel. It's got manual switches and it's also got the capability of linking to an app on your phone. So I thought it'd be a perfect opportunity to demonstrate that panel to you and also do some upgrades on our van at the same time. Let's get into the studio and we'll unbox the kit and I'll show you what comes with it. So here we are in the studio. Let's just have a quick look at what you get in this little box. So let's just open that up. There we go. So initially, instruction manual, very detailed. Have a look at that in a moment. A set of stickers for the switches for all different devices. Okay, here's the switch panel. You can hear those switches. There's a number of different functions on there. We'll go through that in a minute. This is the relay box. So inside there are solid state relays, individually fused. There's 8 circuits in all, so 8 positive and negative outputs on there. These would be the 2 terminals for your positive and negative from your batteries coming in, so a big supply coming in there. And then this whole fuse panel, which is the brains of it if you like, can handle up to 60 amps of load coming out. Now these are at the moment currently maximum rated 30 amps, 20, 20, 10, 10, 5 and 5, and that's how they're currently fused. But reading the manual you can actually, from sort of 6 down to 1 here, these are 20 amp rated relays, so you could change these fuses around, but obviously you've got to bear in mind that the maximum you can put on this whole board is 60 amps. We're not going to be putting anything like that sort of load. I've got small lights and bits and pieces like that, and the TV is probably the biggest. But yeah, that's the actual relay board. And obviously the switch panel plugs into one of these, I think it's this 4-pin one here. And then there is a separate positive and negative supply onto this 2-pin one to power the board. And then in here is the Bluetooth capability for connecting to the smartphone app, and we'll have a look at that in a second. So there's the actual board itself, and essentially that would replace your blade fuse holder. They do give you a 60 amp breaker. We may be down rating that because I haven't got that sort of load, so I may use something different, but that is in the kit. You get power supply cables for the panel itself. There's a long control cable which plugs onto the switch panel, and then that would extend to where the relay board is. So if you want to mount this remotely from where the relay board is, then you've got a long extension cable for that. They do give you some 10mm, these are 10mm, yes, 2 reds and a negative, so you've got the capability of putting power from your batteries onto the fuse board, power to the breaker, and then from the breaker to the fuse board, and then negative from the fuse board back to your batteries. But they're not very long though, so you'd have to locate the fuse board close to the batteries, so I shall probably be extending these. There's a little screw pack, and then a further extension cable for the control panel. Some cable ties, mounting bracket for the actual switch panel, so you've got some options for mounting it there, which is quite handy. And then lastly, in the bottom of the box, yep, there's a mounting bracket for the actual relay board to give you a few mounting options where you want to put that. So there you go, pretty comprehensive kit really. Everything you need there to wire this in and get going. So let's get it set up on the bench and I'll show you how it all works. Okay, let me just run through the setup I've got on the bench here just to try it out. I've got my battery pack bench power supply, which is going to give us 12 volts DC, so that's going to simulate our batteries. I've got a couple of cables wired onto the positive and negative on the relay board. That's our power supply from the batteries. I've plugged in the red cable onto the board, which is the control power. I have used the inline blade fuse that they've provided, so that's protecting that with a 5 amp fuse. Obviously these cables will be the thicker cables that come in the box, and they'll be protected by that 60 amp breaker. So this needs a smaller fuse on the control side. I've got the switch panel plugged in on this 4-pin connector with the extension cable, and the switch panel is there. And then on the outputs of the 12 volt relay board, I've just plugged in an LED light, 12 volt LED light, into one of the connections, and a USB 12 volt USB socket basically plugged into another one of the connections. Now the way the switches are numbered and the way they're connected is the switches are numbered from left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8, and then they go down in power. So from the highest, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So what I've got plugged in here is actually the USB is on port number 5 on a 10 amp fuse, and the light is right at the end on number 8 on a 5 amp fuse. So on our switch panel, the USB would be on this switch and the light's going to be on this switch. Okay, so let's turn on the 12 volt power supply and just check everything works. Oh, there we go. Instantly you can see the green lights come on the switch panel. There is a way of changing these. It's an RGB system, so you can have any colour you like. There is a way of doing it on the keypad, but there's a simpler way to do it on the app, which we'll show you in a minute. Okay, so we've got the USB plugged in on port 5 and the light plugged in on switch 8. So I should press switch 8 and the LED should come on. Wow, that's bright. Just blinded myself and you, but yeah, that works. Pressing that switch and that light comes on, so that's proved that that relay is working. And then switch number 5 would turn on the USB. Now I'll need to just plug a device in to prove that that is powered up, so I'll just plug my iPhone in, and then when I switch that on you should see that charging. Switch on number 5. There we go, instantly charging the phone. So now I know that the USB is working as well, and we can turn that off, and you can't see it, but the little charging symbol has gone off the phone. Turn it back on. There we go, it's charging again. So yeah, they all work brilliantly. So what a excellent little device. You know, you can wire pretty much anything you want to on the outputs of these, similar to how you would do with a blade fuse holder, but now you've got the functionality of being able to turn them on and off. Now that's all well and good, but the best part of this system is the fact that you can control it from your mobile phone via Bluetooth. So that's the next thing, and that's what we're going to show you. So on the back of the instructions there's QR codes there to download the app for your phone, and then once you've got the app downloaded you simply press the Bluetooth button on there, connect to the controller via Bluetooth, and then that gives you all of the functions on the app. And we should be able to use any of these switches now to turn the devices on and off. There we go. And also I could turn the USB on and off. Obviously I haven't got my phone connected, but I can turn those devices on and off from the app on the phone. And I think you can change the colour infinitely on this colour wheel as well. There's more functions on the operation of these. They can be simply on off, they can be a pulsed output, or they can be a momentary relay as well. So in the settings you can change the mode of operation for each of the switches. The other thing you can do as well is you can add icons for each of these switches. So in here there will be all the icons that you've got, the stickers, and you can also apply those to the switches on the app. So all the functionality you've got on the app you've got also manually on the switch panel. So as long as you're in Bluetooth range you can turn all your devices on and off at the press of a button on the phone or on the switch panel. Okay, let's get it all installed into the van. I've also got some further 12 volt bits from 12 Volt Planet. I use these guys a lot for a lot of my 12 volt stuff. They've got a fantastic range of stuff, very reasonable, and they offer next day working day postage as well, which is really handy if you're in a bit of a hurry. So in here I've got some longer 10mm cables for that power supply, because I want to put it a bit further away from my batteries than the cables they provided. I also want to put an isolation switch on the 12 volt as well, so I've got a switch there for that purpose. I've got some different small micro blade fuses because I want to fuse down those circuits to a lower level. So I've just got some more fuses. I've got some ring terminals for the end of those 10mm cables, which we'll be crimping on. Show you those. And then to feed those USB sockets and cigarette sockets, I've got some 6mm cable that I'm going to run back down from the control panel back down to the bench seat to feed those sockets. Cigarette sockets can be up to sort of 15 amps, the devices that you plug in there, so you do need a fairly meaty cable for that. Now, what we had originally on the build in the cupboard above the bench seat was a 12 volt blade fuse holder, and that predominantly just did the lights in the toilet, and it also did a light strip underneath this cupboard here at the back. And then obviously we had the 230 volt socket, which was power for our smart TV. Now we've added some things on the 12 volt side. We've done away with the 230 volt that feeds the TV, and we're now powering that directly off a 12 volt. I did a video on that not too long ago, put a link up here for you to have a look at that. We've also got the Neos smart camera, which needs a 5 volt USB power supply, which we can pick that up off the 12 volt. And there's a couple of other little bits and pieces that I would like to introduce as well. So it's a perfect opportunity to upgrade this, because the supply I've got here currently wouldn't be big enough to run everything simultaneously. So we need to do away with that cable, pull in some bigger cables, and then we'll swap out this socket and the blade fuse holder for the Auxbeam control panel, and that'll give us a lot more flexibility for control in the future. So when we did the original installation, all the cables buried in the wall of the van I put in conduit. We're going to do away with this 230 volt socket, so I don't need that Arctic blue cable anymore. That'll free up that conduit, and that'll allow me to pull two bigger 12 volt cables up to feed the Auxbeam. I've also got a cable, that white cable there, which actually does a couple of USB sockets. I can do away with that cable as well, and that'll give me some capacity in that conduit to run down to some sockets that I want to put in the bench seat. So having the forethought to put these conduits in the first place really helps you when you come to do further upgrades later on down the line. So this is in the bench seat, and that's the other end of that Arctic blue cable. I've just disconnected. That's the one that we're going to withdraw, and I'm going to use that one to pull in the new positive and negative to feed the Auxbeam panel. And then that little white cable that I've got there is just a draw wire to pull in a positive and negative to feed some USB sockets I've just fitted in the front of the bench seat here. So we've got a cigarette socket there, and I'm also going to put a USB socket at the other end of the bench. So I'm going to pull a positive and negative in off of the supply off the Auxbeam panel to feed these new sockets as well. So that'll give us some extra functionality when we want to plug in tech and phones, laptops, all those sort of things later on. I've got the two 10mm cables tied with some insulating tape to that blue Arctic blue cable, and I've got the two 6mm cables tethered to this white cable. So I'm going to use those existing cables to pull these new cables in. Hopefully that's going to give me a bit of an advantage and I won't get any snags. But it's sometimes at this point when the swearing ensues. Let's see. something. Now I've made a slight little change. The power supply for the panel, the Auxbeam supply, comes with one of these piggyback blade fuse holders that you need to put into obviously a blade fuse, take off an auxiliary supply, but I haven't got anything like that near the panel to get a feed off, so I'm going to have to come off of the supply that I've got going up there. So what I've done is I've bought an inline blade fuse holder. It's got a 5 amp fuse in there, which is fine. I've crimped a ring terminal onto one end and I've crimped the connector for the panel onto the other end, so that will be an easier solution, and I'll show you how it fits inside that little panel. So there we go, I've mounted the Auxbeam control panel into the cupboard. I've brought all the cables through from the back of this board, so if we run from the top down, we've got the 10mm supply, positive and negative, onto those terminals there. I've got the control cable plugged onto that 4-pin connector, and that obviously goes to the switch panel, which I've just put up here. I haven't put it on the outside of the cupboard because if you've lived in a van, you don't really want loads of LED lights shining in the van, especially at night. I'm pretty sure you can turn the LEDs off, but I thought I'd keep it in the cupboard. It's out of sight. I much better prefer it that way. And then running down, so it suggests that you use the big power loads from the top down. So we've got the 6mm feeds for the sockets. We've then got the supply for the TV. I've then got a supply for a USB, which is going to pick up the Neos camera and our Wi-Fi. And then the last 3 are lights. And then obviously lastly, you can see that little mod I made. Ring terminal onto the main power supply. Separate fuse on a blade fuse holder, 5 amp, and then that's that 12 volt power powers the board up. So it's just another easy way to do that. So there we go, that's it all installed within the cupboard, nice and neat. I'll put the cover back on, should all fit in there nicely. Whoop. I will fix this board in place, it's only in here temporary at the moment. There we go. So there you go, cover on and switchboard. Now we just need to test it all works okay. Nothing much to add in here other than I've picked up a negative and a positive off my battery string. There's that breaker in the corner there that feeds the whole system, and then I've run those 10mm cables in a bit of Copex right the way through underneath the shower to the front of the van. Okay, so we've got it all running in the van. I've managed to connect the iPhone via Bluetooth to the controller. So now what we can do is obviously we can change the colour of the display. Hopefully you can see that change from green to red and so forth. And on the colour wheel obviously you could select any colour variation in between. There you go. On the switches above here you can see we can turn things on and off. You'll just see the red LED drop out when I press various things on and off. Hopefully you can see that. Those things are actually turning on and off. And on that central button that will turn everything off and turn everything back on. And that's the same button on the controller. That just turns everything off and turns everything back on. I'll put that back on blue. Now also while we're on the app, what you can do down here is you can change the icons. You've got a whole load of icons there that you can set for various buttons to replicate what you've got actually on the display here. You can change the mode of operation for each switch, so it can toggle on and off. It can be a momentary switch or can be a pulsed switch depending on what you've got connected to it. And then lastly, you can actually group switches together if you want to bring them all on. You know, if you wanted to bring 2 or 3 lights on at the same time, you can actually create little groups. And then lastly, I think in the settings, you've got a user guide just for the app there. And you can also change the background if you wanted to put an image on the app rather than just a plain background. But yeah, there you go. The only slight little issue that I've had is it took quite a long time for it to connect via Bluetooth, and the only way I found to do it was to turn the Bluetooth off in the app and use the Bluetooth on your phone to connect to the device. Now, whether that's something that Auxbeam just want to drop me a line and let me know about, or whether it's an upgrade that needs to be done on the app, but the only way I could get it connected was to actually turn the Bluetooth off in the app and connect via the phone's Bluetooth. But yeah, it does all work as you've just seen. So there you go, that's the Auxbeam control panel, and installed and shown you how it works. There's a couple of options for these. They do a 6-way and an 8-way. There's also the simple switch version, or there's the version that comes with the app control. As with all my other videos, I'll put all the details for this in the description of this video. There'll be links down there to where you can get further information, and also links to where you can purchase it. Obviously, depending on what version you have, the price does vary between probably 120 to 150 pounds. So it's not that expensive, and it's a really good option. You know, give you a little bit more functionality than just a standard blade fuse holder if you want to switch a few devices. Hope you've enjoyed that video. If you have, please do give me a like. Consider subscribing to the channel. It doesn't cost anything, and it's a great way of saying thanks. And I'll catch you on the next video. Cheers, guys.